The night before that, when I'm driving back from a show, suddenly the bang, and my windshield just shatters. Okay, and it's dark. There's a friend with me in the car. So maybe somebody tried to shoot us or what. There's somebody on the phone speaking in Hindi, very, very, very abusive. We know you've got two little kids. You're small then. There's also another kind of courage. Now, this is where the faith thing comes in. The time when my family was threatened, my kids were threatened, I had the resources to pick up the phone and call anybody. But I chose to.
One act of courage you're proud of.
Carrying out a gas cylinder, which is.
All right, friends, buckle up for this one. Because today you're about to meet one in a billion, literally. We've got a living legend in the house, the one and only Bobby Cash. Known around the world as the Indian Cowboy. Now picture this. A young guy growing up in Dehradun listening to country music, while the rest of India was jamming to Bollywood beats. No mentors, no roadmap, just a guitar, a dream, and fire in his belly. From teaching himself how to play to walking onto a stage in Australia and getting standing ovation from country music lovers around the world, Bobby didn't just chase a dream, he blazed a whole new trail. But today, we're not just talking about music, we're diving into what it cost him to walk the road, the fears, the doubts, the loneliness, the courage it took to keep going when no one else believed in it. This episode is for anyone who's ever felt that they didn't fit in, like the dream was too different, or like the world just didn't have a place for what they carried. So lean in, because today Bobby's about to remind you, courage doesn't come from being fearless, it comes from moving forward anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Vikram, and this is Courage Coach. Welcome, Bobby. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
So let's start with your story. I want to get right into it. Before all the achievements, recognition, and everything, you got the fame and exposure. Who were you at that time?
I was just a boy, just like many other, growing up in a place that way back in the 60s, which was like a place nowhere, surrounded by mountains. And I actually grew up at the edge of a forest, a little place called Clement Town. And this was a time where there was no internet, there was communications. You were you grew in your own space, little or big, and I was just this little boy, and who grew up in a beautiful family. And but I remember the couple of things that I always grew up with music around me. There was a lot of love and warmth from the people around me.
So
And
I imagine this boy in Clement Town, in love with country music, while the whole nation is jamming to Bollywood beats. How did that come about?
as far back as I can remember,
Yeah.
I think, call it Providence. That's the family I was born in, but country music was played in my home ever since I was born. It's one of the earliest sounds of music that I heard, and strangely enough, it was my mother, it was an uncle of mine and other people in my family who saw back in those days, where there was hardly any access to country music, but somehow they'd got hold of some records, and maybe in those days you had shortwave radio,
Mm-hmm.
and you could tune in all over the world. I don't know that I'd heard it play on the radio, and I think it just did something to me, you know.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe that,
yeah,
the first sounds you hear as a young boy
yeah,
growing up,
yeah.
it has a lasting impact on you.
And of course, there was the music.
Right.
Then there was the books.
Hmm.
And I was born in a family of people who loved books, who loved it. Back then, it was books. You didn't have a lot of the stuff you have today.
But you were still placed in a small town
It,
in India.
yes,
So how did you ever feel misunderstood or you had a totally different taste?
yes, I did. I did, of course, because, for example, when I went to school, I mean, there's this song that I often sing. It's called I grew up dreaming of being a cowboy. And like I said, we had these books all around. A lot of the books were westerns.
Mm-hmm.
Writers of the Zane Grey and Max Brand and Louis L'Amour and the I pick up, even as a little kid, I'd pick up those books and see those illustrations of cowboys, and just it kind of just drew me. And then the country music sound, it was cowboy music. I had this thing about cowboys and these guys, these high riding heroes, and they kind of became my earliest heroes. And of course, I was different because uh, I felt inside like this is who I can be, and I felt like a cowboy. I can't even explain it, and not many people would understand that back then.
Did you ever feel that you were born in the wrong place?
Uh, no,
No.
I won't really say that because at an early age I discovered that a lot of place. There's this thing about place. It's not
Yeah.
the thing. It's about what's inside of you. And I discovered something inside of me.
Mm. What was that?
It
What did you discover?
yeah, yeah. They. I guess I discovered the cowboy, that cowboy heart. I or the first CD I recorded uh, was that had a song in it, and the CD was called Cowboy at Heart. I discovered, there was something inside, and because of that, my environment seemed to fit in.
Wow.
I could,
Yeah.
and of course, growing up in Dehradun and growing up out in the countryside, Clement Town was just country. There was just wide open spaces there, forest, and the home I grew up in was a big home, and we had my grandmother. She ran it like a little farm, so
So much
there
like the
was the
Midwest.
farming.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had a little farm there. Where we had she raised cows and buffaloes, and we used to grow wheat and rice and other crops, and so I mean, in one sense, I also grew up like a farm boy, and then my family loved music, and it was we sit under the wide open spaces. People in my family would sing and play guitars. My uncles and some of my cousins, and we'd all have these sing songs, light a fire outs. It fitted in with what I read about cowboys,
Yeah.
and all those paintings from the old west, and pictures, and the songs I heard, and uh, you know
So
it,
at what stage of your life or what age did that dream take birth and you knew this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
it wasn't even about doing.
Yeah.
It was about being. I wasn't sure what I'd do, but I kind of knew that this is the kind of person. I somehow like I said, it wasn't about. I never had a dream to go to America, for example, to
Really?
the U.S.
Hmm.
and I mean, uh, it was more about being.
Beautiful.
And
No, I love that.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've sung in Texas. I've been to Nashville. I've met real cowboys and stuff. I'm so glad I did it. But when I did it, it was like I was one of them, and I was accepted as one of them. So I already carried something, that cowboy thing inside of me.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
Just before we
yeah,
started rolling, I said that it's almost like your DNA was programmed before you were born. In your mother's womb, you were
yeah.
already a cowboy, I guess.
I, you know, I mean, for those of us who are inclined to believe that, and I do, because when I read my Bible, and I do, that's what I found, that before you were born, even in your mother's womb, I formed you, and it's kind of, I think I kind of just float along,
Mm.
and it makes the things that you are meant to have in life, the things you're meant to discover, when you flow along
Yeah.
with something inside of you, those things, this kind of, yeah, they don't elude you for too long. Now, for example, this country thing, I just love the sound of country music,
Hmm.
and it was very hard to come back. It's not like today you Google and I didn't grow up in that era, but when I was just a little boy, maybe middle 60s, my mother's sister, my aunt, who was older than my mother, she went to study in the U.S. and then to live there for a few years. And guess where she went to? She went to live in Nashville, Tennessee,
Wow.
which is the home of country music.
Mm.
And the place where she worked was just opposite or next door to the famous RCA recording studios,
Really?
where a lot of country music artists would come and record, artists who were big in the 60s. And she'd mail home records to us. So whether it was Johnny Cash or Glenn Cash, you name them.
Yeah.
And we had all the records coming by mail. And, and many times they'd be signed by some of the artists because she could get to meet them. So the music just came.
How old were you when your aunt was there and sending you records from
Well,
the US?
I must have been 5 years old.
Really? That young?
Yeah, that young.
Wow.
But the records came in,
Yeah.
and by the time I think she came back from the U.S. Early 70s, so I might have been maybe 10, 12 years
Hmm.
old.
Hmm.
By then, country music was in, and we had all these records, and I was playing them, and I was trying to sing the songs, and the other thing was this: my love for country music and my love for the guitar, and it wasn't easy to come by guitars back then
Mm.
as it is now. But I had an uncle
Hmm.
back then who was kind of a genius. He could do anything. He could make anything. Who was also a musician, and he could make beautiful guitars.
Oh,
So he'd make guitars for all the boys in the family.
yeah.
So
What I love is what you said. You are not doing, you were being. You were,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's the thing. That's the
yeah,
thing.
that's what I love because I live in Germany and I've heard like some
Yeah,
musicians, man, if I were in US, Nashville or Seattle, if it's
yes,
rock, and
yeah,
I would have been so
yeah,
successful and all that. But I love what you said that it was a part of you, and
yes.
because it was so much of you, Bobby, that everything else, the world around you, sort of came to the same wavelength.
That's the way it kind of.
Everything started to vibe
Yeah,
according to
yeah,
what you were. That
yes.
is amazing. I haven't heard that perspective. That is so inspiring.
Well,
Wow.
it that's the way it's with me. I reckon everybody has their own
Because
ways.
what is so,
Yeah,
here you are surrounded by people. Okay, you said, in your family, you found that environment which was conducive to country
absolutely.
music. But, when you go out, let's say on the street, in school and all, I'm sure nobody has heard of what? Country music? What's that?
Well,
Back then.
Vikram, back then,
Yeah.
I loved, I'm wearing a hat. So my aunt who lived in the U.S. and later on, the moment she came back, just before that, one of my uncles who was very close to me, he was like a hero to me, and he loved country music.
Mm.
He also went to live in Nashville, and he was a total country boy. He was like the original cowboy in our family. And then he'd keep me supplied with after records came tapes and all that stuff. So I had all the music, and then every time he'd come by, I said, just get me boots, get me a hat, and get me a belt buckle. So it was like it was inside of me.
How
these
did you
things.
feel when you first time you wore the hat and the boots
I'll,
and
I'll,
the
I'll I'll
belt
tell you about
buckle?
the first pair of boots I got.
Yeah.
That was really funny. I might have been about 12 years old, and my first real pair of cowboy boots. And he landed in Delhi, then drove down to Dehradun. It was a long drive, and probably was around nightfall. And we were very close, And he came and he gave me a hat, and he said, "These are boots for you." Okay, beautiful boots, but I didn't know how to wear them.
Oh.
And the whole family was struggling. It was like scene out of a movie. And they were the right size. I just didn't know how to put them on. And the whole house was in an uproar. And finally, it was like, and I was almost, in tears. And my uncle, I said, I mean, he was, we were also disappointed, but we kept trying. And suddenly the boots slipped on it, and I didn't have my feet positioned the right way. But
Mhm.
so that was my first pair of boots.
And what did you do after you had the boots on? Did you go out or did you walk around the house?
You know, yes, I wouldn't take them off. I think I probably slept in them. and then it was me with my boots and my hat. And then I think it was vacation time, and then I went to school with these cowboy boots. And back then, everybody was. It's like it was crazy. What are
It's
you
like, you
wearing?
know what?
I got pulled up.
It's like Cinderella lost one of her
Yeah,
shoe and found it back. This belonged to me. So it was out there
yeah,
somewhere. This is Bobby's. It has to
yeah.
be sent across the world, and Bobby's gonna slip them on.
And when I went to school
Yeah.
with those boots, so everybody, my teacher, I got pulled up. What's this you wearing?
Really?
Yeah,
Why? Did they find it odd?
it was. It was back then.
Mm.
This is like early 70s.
What reactions did you get, like when you had your boots on and the hat and you went out? When people who did not know you, they saw you,
Yeah,
how did they
yeah,
respond or
yeah. A
react?
lot of looks. Say, what's this guy? It's like, and of course, a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't know what cowboys were about. But back then, when I was in the 60s and 70s, there was this hippie thing, this hippie movement.
Mm-hmm.
So people didn't know. So some hippie, hippie ja raha hai. In Hindi they would say.
Hippie ja raha hai.
Yes. When you're kind of
Yeah.
being yourself, not trying to be somebody,
Yeah.
I never got offended.
Yeah.
You know, I, but then I kind of ignored it, and I suppose they got used to me being that way, and
How did it make you feel as a young boy or teenager?
but I used to get a lot of remarks, sometimes,
Yeah.
but that didn't stop me.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of people. People said mean things to and but it never bothered me beyond the moment. I don't think I ever slept with anything that anybody ever said to me.
So
I'd be up the next day. I never took my boots, and I never did it consciously to affect people. I wasn't trying to sort of take my stand. I'm going to wear there was never that rebellious thing. It was just natural for me.
I think you were just
Yeah,
being
I
yourself.
was just being
Like you
myself.
said, it was
Yes,
natural.
yes.
It was part of you.
And
And
ultimately, I think that's what got
yeah.
through to people. The same people who would they said this guy's real, and I had many people, who I knew they envied the way I looked, the way I went about. Many of them tried to be like me.
Tell me, where did you draw your courage from during that time?
Uh, Now when I look back, I think it's been so many years. It must have been hard, and it was in many ways. And I wasn't some kind of Landhart or anything. I was just normal like anybody affected by things. But I think it came from inside, and also a sense of accepting myself. And I think probably when I was 18, I I kind of had this I got a perspective of what I need to do in life and what my life has to be about. And I'm a person of faith, so one thing I discovered, that for me the simple rule was like Jesus said, love God and love people.
Love God and love
Love
people.
people. That's been my, that's the simple message. It's not a religious message or anything.
Did you grow up with faith or hearing about Christ?
Yes, I did. I did. But like everybody, anybody, my father wasn't a Christian.
Mhm.
My mother came from a Christian background, so I knew all of that, and I was always. But I grew up reading the Bible stories and stuff. But there was something that pulled me, and the thing was that when I was 18, I kind of already, a cowboy. But I had this. What should I say? A deep sense of conviction about that God is real and that He loves me, and and I need Him. Simple as that.
When you
Simple as.
say you had a deep sense of conviction, was it a moment? Was there an event in your life when you realized, okay, you had the conviction, or was it a progress?
I think it was progressive, but then it came to a moment of time, and against my grain, be, because I have always, religion and that kind of thing. Even my dad,
Yeah.
he was a great man, but he was totally unreligious. He'd said, never be religious
Mm.
because religion will make you fanatic. I agree. I still do, with that kind of thing. But with this thing about faith and God, I I discovered that it was just a knowing. I can't even explain it.
Mm.
Maybe it was the way I was brought up. I had people who prayed around me. I'd seen prayers being answered. I saw my own life. I mean, I'll tell you about myself. When I was born, I might have been about 2 months old, and this is a story that was told to me that uh, I was dying or had practically died, and my mother's sister, one of her sisters, who later on, grew up. We loved her very much, and she was a very praying person. And there was my mother was very. She must have been 19 when I was born, and she she was holding me, and I think I was probably breathing my last or about gone. And there was no doctors or anybody there, so my aunt, she just literally snatched me out of my mother's arms and held me, and she just prayed for me. And this is what she tell me, my mother, that this is what your aunt prayed, and Lord, I give this child to you. You look after him, let him live. And I mean, here I am after so many years. So I revived or
Here
whatever.
you are, very much alive and
Yes.
kicking. Yeah.
So there was always this something in me, and this was a story that had been told to me that always stayed with me. That somebody, and I knew it was God. It's so simple, as Jesus loved God and loved people.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of thing, especially as I got a bit older,
Mhm.
especially after 18, after this experience, people stopped offending me. You I could smile back,
Yeah.
and that won me a lot of admirers, and people kind of liked me. I think if I had walked around with a chip on my shoulders, would have been different. I just flowed with it. I just flowed with it. I said, "I'm this. This is who I am, and this is what's going to get me to wherever I'm supposed to go." I wasn't trying to shove my hat or my
Mm.
boots or my style,
Yeah.
to offend them.
Mm.
It was just me.
So a time came in your life when your father passed away.
Yes. If anybody had to, write a story, a lot of
Mm.
people want to write stories about me, make me. But my father he was one of the strangest.
Uh-huh.
You know, you could write books about him. He was totally eccentric. He wasn't a normal man, but a very lovable person. Everybody knew and loved him. He was the most super hypochondriac. But in his younger days, he had been into big game hunting, mountaineering, and all kinds of things. Very adventurous man. Shot tigers, back when it was allowed.
Do you remember any moment where he was being his eccentric
Oh
self?
yeah. This thousand. I mean, just the other day, there was I was sitting with somebody and trying to remember, talking about my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do,
he was amazing.
yeah.
For example, he had this thing about he used to go around with
Mhm.
he thought that every day he says I'm going to die today.
Hmm.
Super hypochondriac. So he always went around with a doctor and with tons of medical books. And the doctors, they say Seiji, they call him Seiji, prescribe a medicine. He said, Doctor, take this book, please read what the composition is. I mean, it was hilarious. And then if you were in the car with him, you couldn't cough, you couldn't sneeze. You know, you did that, he'd say, "Stop the car, driver, stop the car, out."
So was it only in his mind, or would it really affect him if somebody sneezed?
Well, if it's in your mind,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
will affect you.
That's
So,
true. That's
yeah.
true.
So he was very restless. He in later years he would spend more time driving in the car, just being driven around, sometimes the whole night. And he had a lot of properties.
How was your relationship with him?
Oh, he was a very interesting fellow. I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
he loved music, and when he was younger, he could play a lot of instruments. So when he made sure I had guitars later on. When guitars came. But he said the era he was born in the early 1900s,
Hmm.
and the background he came from, he said never play for money. It was against their family, the kind of family background we came from. But he said, you be the best in the world. And he had a great ear for music.
Wow.
So he said, you be the best in the world. And that's something I got from him, the excellence. So he'd hear me play, but then he'd say, never play for money. And as long as he was alive, I think he died in 94, I never did a performance for a paid performance. I used to play for the armed forces. Sometimes I'd go. He said, "Oh, are you going to play?" I said, "Yes, Babuji. Army has called me. Our forces. You're not charging," and I never did. I only got full time professionally into music after he passed away, and I think today he would have been very proud of what I'm doing.
I'm sure.
Yes,
I'm
I know
sure.
that's
Yeah.
the kind of. But back then, I respected it. That's the other thing. That even though I was super talented, it's only after I only got into music after I was already married. He'd seen me married, and I had a little girl, and then he passed away, and I was kind of released. But as long as he was alive, I respected that.
So he passed away in 1994.
1994.
Tell me, how did that change things inside of you?
Well, all of a sudden, and my mother, she was still there, but my mother she was a, a great lady, a great woman of faith. When I did my first album, she's the one who wrote the lyric, "Great encouragement in my life."
Really?
Even though she was mostly confined to bed. She couldn't walk because of her arthritis. But great and you talk about courage.
Mhm.
There's two people I learned courage from.
Mhm.
That was my mother, and then my grandmother, her mother, who was she was the original cowgirl.
Your grandmother.
My grandmother, she was man, she was
Yeah.
she died in her late 90s, and
Did she love
she
music?
she not just music,
Yeah.
but she loved all of us. And she was widowed when she was hardly maybe late 30s or something, and with 10 or 11 children back in 1945. And they almost had nothing, but it was her. And back in those days, she made it through that.
So you got your courage from your mom's side, your grandmother, your mom's mother,
Yes,
then your
that's
mother,
that's what I
and
was close to.
yeah.
Yes, I grew up with them.
So in 1995, I think that's when your journey began, when you decided to go to Delhi, right?
Yes, my dad. I lost my dad, and I had a lot of. I was married,
Yeah.
and fortunately, I was when you marry the right person,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
it makes life so much easier.
That's true. What did you feel in your heart? Did you feel like this is a risk, or what did it feel like when you took this decision to move out?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
We were both of us, and my mom was still there.
Mm-hmm.
We were like kids. It was an adventure, and it sort of came about because I always had my guitar. I was all singing and playing. Everybody would tell me, "You're too good. We're doing this at home."
Uh-huh.
And I said, with thousands of people telling me, everybody hears me. And then we started having a conversation, And then I lost my dad,
Yeah.
and there's not much I inherited from him, nothing actually.
Um,
And in fact, before he died, he said, "I've hardly anything to give you. I can just bless you."
so he
So
blessed you.
yeah, really, he put his hands on me. I said, "That's good enough for me,
So as a
That's a
young
person.
man at that time, when you were going out, how did you feel? Come out with your
Yeah.
inner struggle or conflict. What was going on inside
I'll
of
tell you what.
Yeah.
It was me and my wife,
Yeah.
Angie, and a lot of support from my mother.
Uh-huh.
We were excited like kids. Okay, we have this. Now we have to make a choice. Back then, my hometown Dehradun was a very laid back little town, so cut off from a lot of things that go around in the world,
Uh-huh.
And then to get onto that level of music
Yeah.
that I knew that was meant for me. So we had a choice: go to Bombay
Uh-huh.
back then,
Yeah.
or the other big city was Delhi.
Right.
Now Mumbai seemed very far away.
Mm.
Delhi is close to home. It's like 5-6 hours drive.
Right. Yeah.
And fortunately, I had an old car
Uh-huh.
from my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a guy who had tons of cars, but all I was left with was this old Fiat car.
Uh-huh.
And I think I had about 6 brake failures right out on the highway on that car.
6 failures.
Yes, twice
Yeah.
the wheels came off.
2 times the wheels came off.
Yes.
Oh.
So that's the kind of, but it was an adventure. We
Yeah.
were like kids.
So it was more of an adventure. You were excited and
Yes.
no fear, no anxiety.
No, not of that kind. Are you into any kind of adventure sport?
Sorry?
Adventure sport people, who
Yeah,
climb
yeah.
the mountains, or, who do these crazy things, You just don't look at the danger.
No.
I mean, here we are in a car like this, and there's her, me, and my little girl, and then leaving home, and we started out. It was summertime.
Uh-huh.
Growing up in Dehradun, I mean, like Delhi heat, that itself
Yeah.
was scary.
Mm.
I remember talking about the heat when I went to Delhi in those days. Hot afternoon in Delhi, May or June.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I might have got a heat stroke or something. And I said, I'm going back.
Mm.
And I was in this little room, and it was like, and I must have been sick. And then I just prayed. I said, Lord, I'm going back home. You got to do something.
Yeah.
You know what I did? Craziest thing.
Yeah.
Anybody hearing this watching, don't ever do that.
Yeah.
In peak summer in Delhi, 44 degrees, I don't know how much, sun shining bright, and maybe 2 in the afternoon or 2:30, I went out for a walk in the hot sun.
What?
Yes. I said, this thing is trying to kill me. And it's got me scared. I said, let's see who gets killed. It was that kind of thing.
You wanted to defy the heat.
Yes.
Wow.
And I went out. I kept walking out in the sun for hours. till the sun went down. I don't know how I did it, but I came back.
How did you
And
feel after
I,
walking around in the
I
sunshine?
felt great.
Really?
Yes.
So first you were sort of uncomfortable. You had some discomfort, but then you decided to stand up.
Not just discomfort. What happens when you get a heat stroke? It's like you think you're going to die. It's all, and I was alone. I was alone. There was nobody with me.
And so you said, I might as well get used to it. If I have to stay here,
Yes.
I might as well get
or
used
I'm
to
going
it.
back home.
Or you go back.
I said if I can,
toughen up
yeah.
or go home.
And after that, and I was always a fit guy working out.
Yeah.
And one of the things that concerned me was keeping in shape. And I used to work out,
Right.
and I was really big.
Uh-huh.
And I remember people when I used to walk around in Delhi, kids would come up. Those days you had, now it's WWE, but it had coming in on television. People say, "Are you from the WWF?" But the other thing was, in that old car of mine, I carried iron weights and dumbbells. So what I started doing then, right in the afternoon, Delhi, 2 o'clock in the heat, I would work out. And I said, this heat is not going to beat me. And it became, the heat was no issue.
So
So that's just an example.
So heat is an external thing.
Yes.
But what were the inner battles you were fighting?
One of the biggest battles was I had, first of all, I knew nobody. I just had my guitar, and I knew that I was capable.
Mhm.
But then I had my wife, my family, and I had a mother who wasn't too well, being away.
Mhm.
And there's always this question mark.
Mhm.
I mean, how do I go about it? I wasn't. I grew up in Dehradun. I wasn't street smart or city smart.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I had this inner thing, this inner faith.
Mhm.
I knew that God was with me.
Did you ever think, like, what are you doing here? Like before you got a gig or something, what are you doing here with your family and your little children?
Fortunately, when I ventured out first, my in-laws
Yeah.
lived in Meerut, not very far from Delhi.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I said, I'm not getting out there. This. So they were comfortable. That was always a priority.
Okay.
Yes.
So you you dropped your kids at your in-laws
Yes.
for that safety security
Yes.
before you ventured
Yes,
out
yes,
into
yes.
the heart of Delhi.
At the heart of Delhi.
Okay.
And
So while you were alone, you were for a while separated from your family, from your wife and children.
yeah,
Did you have self-doubt at any point?
like I said, for us, it was an adventure. Even driving in that old
But
car.
at that time, when you were like out looking for gigs, you're by yourself and your family's not here, did you ever feel lonely?
I've always felt lonely when I'm away from my family. Always, I still do. I wasn't lonely because I didn't have gigs. I've traveled around. I've done tours. There's always a part. So I think that'll never go away.
How do you cope
Yeah.
with that when you're like physically away from your family?
Yeah.
How do you cope with it?
How do you cope?
Yeah.
I think you carry them on the inside of you. And thank God, in later years, with when communications became so much better, now it's so much easier. But back then, it wasn't so. So it's always you think nice things. You carry, and you're there for a purpose because what you're doing includes those who you love. See, in my life, it's now it's great. It's a great thing to follow your dream. But if it's just your dream, for me, my dream has always had to include my God
Mhm.
and my family. And because of that, in spite of being far away, you're still near. and you're there, you kind of uh, sense and you feel their presence, and I'm not alone.
So you never ran too fast or too far that would, put your family at jeopardy or.
No, it was a very conscious decision. I remember uh, my uncle, who was very close to me, and like I said earlier, he was for me he was a real cowboy, and he came to visit us. For a time, he lived in Canada, and he had a heart to heart with me. He said, he said, "Kid, you got a family," and he loved music. He loved it was. He said, "What you're doing is great," but he said, "First of all, this is a very dangerous profession." He said, look what's happened to a lot of artists who've become successful and the effect it has on the family." And I said, yes.
Did you understand the dangers he was talking about?
Yeah, yes. Because
What were those?
well, I mean, if you look at what happened to Johnny Cash, a lot of musicians, good boys, they've got into this, and when the fame comes, the money comes, and all those things, it's many families have been destroyed, alcohol, drugs, women, all that kind of thing. So he said, that's one part of it, because you're a human. And then the other part of it is there's no, this is not like getting a job in a bank and, you start earning. There's been people who've gone on trying to chase their dreams and, they've starved or their families have suffered. So I said, okay.
So what kept you within that boundary?
I'll tell you what. First of all, I said, okay, I'll never leave music. I always believe in excellence. I'll always be ready. But if I don't make it on this round, okay, I'll give it 2 years. If in 2 years, I'm not able to provide for my family the way I should, and I also had other dependents, old aunts. I said, if I can't do that, then I'll do something else. But I'll still, I mean, I've I've been blessed with this gift of music. It'll never go away.
So you gave yourself 2 years.
I gave myself 2
and you
years.
said you was something else. What was that something else?
I don't know what that something else would have been. Before I got into music, I was a school teacher. Almost 8 years.
Wow.
Yes, that's part of my life. So I said, and I was, of course, I taught music, and that was another part of my life.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll touch upon that.
Yeah.
How that impacted my life.
Right.
But I said something else.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe go back to teaching and, but thank God.
So when
it didn't take me 2 years. It took me, it just took me a few months.
Wow. How did it come about? What happened?
When I first landed up in Delhi, no, again, I was, this is you talked earlier about the way I was, and how people would react. I think that became my biggest selling point.
Your USP.
My USP.
Yeah.
The boots, the way I looked.
Yeah.
I remember back then when I went into Delhi, I was wearing beautiful boots and a hat, and like a shirt the Western gunfighters wear. I was dressed like, and I walked into a fancy hair salon, which is a very famous brand, And the guy who owns that, he's a celebrity, but he looked at me. He didn't know who I was. He said, you look like somebody who's walked out of like a gunfighter who's walked out. He's like, who's this guy? So it worked for me.
Wow.
And then the skills I developed on my guitar.
Yeah.
And again, when I sang,
Yeah.
it just, the way I talk.
Perfect package.
Yeah. It was like, I was playing the part.
Yeah.
And it was natural.
So everything worked in your favor.
All those years, it was natural. The boots, the hat, the way I talk. the way I sang. It just there was nobody like me,
Wow.
and so
You earlier you were talking about how this gig at rodeo
yeah.
came about.
Well,
Tell me a little
so
about it.
somebody saw me,
Yeah.
said this cowboy. Now I didn't know Delhi too well, but somebody said there's somebody's opened a place in Connaught Place.
Yeah.
It's called the Rodeo. I said rodeo. Wow, sound interesting. They set it up like a Western saloon, and everybody there dresses up like a cowboy. The waiters, the managers, and everybody. And so I happened to be in Delhi. It was very hot, maybe a June afternoon.
Yeah.
Very, very hot. And I walked into rodeo. I parked my car, went up the steps and through the bat wings, and I said, "Oh yeah, this place is like a Western saloon."
Yeah.
And all these guys dressed like cowboys.
Yeah.
And I saw there was this bar, and the bar, instead of bar stool, it had saddles, and the place was really packed. There were a lot of people there, a lot of Westerners there, and so there was an empty saddle there. So I mounted that saddle there. I ordered a lemonade or something. It was kind of cold. It was hot. While I'm sitting there, just soaking up the place, looking around, I look up and there's this huge screen, and there's music playing, but it's just they have karaoke tracks playing, and I just and suddenly there's a song that comes on, and I know the song, and I just kind of look around. There's a microphone in front of me. It's like instinctively, I just picked up the microphone and checked it. It's on, and I started singing. And there's this usual buzz around the place, and while I'm singing, and people say, "Hey, there's something different with the music." And suddenly, by the time I'm kind of a couple of verses in the song, there's a hush in the room. And everybody's looking, and they just see this guy. And he was dressed like a cowboy. And my gear is really real. It's better than what the guys are wearing. And this guy, he's not one of the waiters or somebody you're singing. And by the time I finished the song, it's like there's wild applause. And I'm also surprised, what's going on. And then the manager, who's also dressed in a Western gear, he comes. He says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Bobby Cash." I said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Dehradun." Okay. He says, "Our owner wants to meet you." I said, "Where is he?" He said, "No, he's not here. While you were singing, I called him up, told him about you. When can you?" I said, "I'm heading back home to Dehradun. I'll be back next week." And we didn't have cell phone those days, and so it took, I gave him my number, and I took the number, something like that. The next week, I called him up. I went back to Delhi, and I met the owner, who turned out to be a wonderful guy and a real gentleman, and still close to him. And he said, "I have, these guys, they've been raving about you, and he said, we're going to have a festival here, Mexican food festival. We're getting chefs from Mexico." And this gentleman is really classy, and he does things in style. He said, "We would like you to come and sing here for the festival." I said, "Wow. I'm at a lose and I'm looking for something. And here it's on a platter." I said, "Sure, it'd be great. And how much will you charge?" I had no idea. So I kind of quickly calculated. I said, "Okay, about a week. I need, this should take care of what I need." And I quoted something, and he's looking at me. He said, "Do you know what the musicians charge? Here's charge?" I said, I don't have a clue, you know. I said, I've just come in Dehradun. He said, no, there's these guys who play in Five Star. They're great bands, and they're bands. I said, I'm not a band, I'm alone. I said, but can they do what I do? So he just laughed. And, you know, that was it. And that became my first proper gig in Delhi. And the festival was a great hit. And you know, the entertainment columns and newspapers wrote about me. And it became a great partnership over the next few years. And after that, they asked me, please come and sing here. And, you know, so I would sing there a couple of weeks. That, you know, that gave me a base in Delhi. I could get my family to move in. And that's the time my son was born. And so Delhi sort of became a base. And that led to other things, me signing on a record deal with Magnus Sound, a Hindi pop label, you know. And
So when you got this gig, you were able to provide for not only yourself, your stay in Delhi, but also bring your family to
yes,
live with you.
yes,
And that took care of you. That
yes,
started you off on your journey.
yes. I had a
provided for
base.
you.
Yes.
Right. Now I want to know. I want to go inside you.
Yeah.
Again, how was your mental state at that time? At any point of time you feel depression, anxiety, or any sort of you know, feeling lost?
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
The way things were happening, uh, it like I said, it was like I was part of a story. It was an adventure. I, I think maybe I was too much of a kid to think that seriously. And any times, you know, many times you have these voices inside of you, which, you know, how will this really last? For example, here I am at rodeo. Okay, what happens if,
This is taken away.
yeah, this is taken away? You know, this is normal, you know. But like I said, you got to have faith.
How would you handle that when you heard these voices in your head?
Yeah. Wes, I would all something. I would say I've come this far. When you've come this far, it's better to go ahead and ride it while it's good and enjoy. I never thought too much about the future because that can be so.
You took life as it came, one day at a time.
As it, and with me, things were just happening. You know, like here I'm at rodeo, singing there, and then, like I said, you got to be ready. And then shortly after that, at that point of time in the middle '90s, Hindi pop music was coming about in a big way.
Made in India,
Made in
Alicia
India,
Chennai,
yes. And there was this label called Magnus Sound.
Magnus Sound, I remember that. Yeah.
Now the thing was, I think because I was so ready with my music and stuff, you know, and everything that, you know, earlier people would tell me, you know, in India you have to do Bollywood, you have to sing this, and I'm doing country music. But somehow I happened to be with people who were connected with Magnus Sound.
And what was it about, Magnus Sound?
That was
record label.
A record label that was doing Made in India, you know.
Okay, all these pop
yeah, all this
music.
indie pop. No, I didn't do Hindi music, but somehow somebody spoke about me to Magnus Sound people, and there's this guy in Delhi, you know, this is what he looks like, and he great singer, and you know, good musician, everything, you know, he's got something. And before I knew it, I was set up to meet with Magnus Sound A&R, based in Delhi, who became a very close friend, and suddenly I'm signed on to Magnus Sound. But they said you have to sing in Hindi.
How did you respond?
Now again, that's something that's not me.
Yeah.
And I said, I've never sung in Hindi. But they said, you know, you're very talented, everything, but this is what we are in. This is India. Now, that was a tough one. But again, it's a big thing. especially back in the middle 90s, to have a cassette or a CD come out, and then to have a music video in those days, you had these, you had MTV and Channel V and all that stuff.
Yeah, I
And so,
remember in the 90s,
yes,
it was big.
yes,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you get on to another level, you know. So I thought about it. We spoke about it. I talked to my mom, and I said, okay. I said, music is music. What's the language? And it's Hindi is my language. I can speak it very. I'm just not used to singing. So, and I said, okay, it's actually a great stepping stone, because what it's going to it's going to give me sort of a celebrity status. It's going to elevate my, you know, uh, that's the way I saw it. And so I signed on with Magnus Sound, and here I was recording my first album while still doing my country
Rodeo
music.
gig.
That was always
Yeah.
there. That was the real me. So I did this first album, and then I remember there were a lot of other artists who signed on with me at that point of time, who became very, very popular, and a lot of them went on into Bollywood, but that was never my thing. So there was artists like Daler Mehndi, and became iconic, So we were all together, and then there's Shan, and so we were all part of the Magnus Sound roster, and
When your album came out in Hindi,
yeah,
how did you feel like listening to your own sound? Did you feel like, oh, this is not the real me?
yeah, yes, of course, of course. And also, one of the things which all of us, were, it was like, so wow, I never even played my guitar on that.
Somebody else
Just
played
tracks. No, yeah, it was like
tracks.
It was like I just did the vocals. They made the tracks. That's the way it was. So it wasn't me, but for me it was like I said, okay.
Did you write the songs?
My I asked my mother.
Oh, your mom wrote the songs.
Yeah, she wrote the songs.
And who composed them?
I composed the melodies, and it was set to to music by Jawahar Wattal, who did the lyrics. He did all the great pop albums. So, so I did that. I'm still doing my country music, and then after that, I did another Hindi pop album called Rukja.
Yeah.
And then after 2 albums, and then I also did a guitar instrumental album of Hindi film songs, and I'm still doing my country music. And after two
Wow.
albums,
So,
after 2 albums, and my heart is never in it. I said, that's it.
so you're doing your country music, your live music.
Yes.
You've done 2 albums.
Yes.
Now you've got that celebrity status.
Yes.
You're known all around the country.
Yes.
And you've also done 2 tracks in Bollywood. Now, during all of this journey, you've come so far from that young boy, young man in Dehradun.
Yeah.
What kept you grounded? I want to talk a little more about your faith.
I never stopped being that young boy from Dehradun with that faith. Inside of me, I was always the same. My life has always been sort of, when I was 18, I seriously, I got to know God in a deep way. It sounds very cliched, but I discovered that, I needed the Lord. And I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And, we'd always, we go to church and people say, oh, give your life to Jesus. But that became, it was sometimes so cliched, but I discovered that it was more than just me giving my life to Jesus. It was letting Him be part of my life. And I experienced something which, it's very hard to explain till you experience that. But I knew that God was real, and He just became real to me. It's beyond beyond just a religion or just kind of a faith. Faith in the not sense of your personal faith, like a religious faith. Or I'm this, I'm a Christian, or I'm a this or that. That became such a defining moment in my life. And I found that the experience I had, it it just transformed certain things inside of me. For example, I knew that God was real without ever having sort of seen him face to face. I knew that he loved me, and I knew that he didn't look at me out at my outside. You know, there's something written in the Bible that Lord looks not at the outside, he looks at the heart. Now that became real to me. I read in the Bible that he will perfect that which concerns me. Now, even at that young age, that he's in charge, everything concerning me, he will bring it to pass. I just have to flow along, just walk with him. That became like, it became like a deeply uh, a rooted thing inside of me. It gave me so much confidence that, and I still feel the same way. So that boy who came from Dehradun, who had this total faith in God, in spite of all the contrary things, I went through a lot of things which, in normal circumstances, should have shaken me.
Tell us one of those things.
You know, I mean, it was around this time. You know, earlier it was losing my father. Then in '98, I lost my mother, who was still very young. You know, who was even younger than I am now. You know, she was just in her late 50s. You know, and it, and we were close, and you know, she just passed away. A few years later, I lost this uncle of mine who I loved very much. So many things, and then in the music industry, I discovered other things. You know,
Talk about a little about your mom, because earlier you told that you got your courage from your mom.
yeah,
You received your courage from your
yes,
mom, yeah, and it came down from your grandmother, her mom.
grandmother, yes,
Now,
yes,
when she passed away,
yeah.
did it shake your resolve inside you, or some sort of that resilience, or did it impact you in any way?
You know, when she passed away, I think I became even stronger.
Really?
Yes, you know, the first thing I did, as it is, I was the oldest in the family, two younger sisters. Everybody was kind of broken, and somehow, you know, I knew I had to stand up to it. And I remember even at a funeral, it was a conscious thing. You know, people might be thinking this guy's crazy. I put on my best cowboy. That's how I went to a funeral. I said, I'm not going to go down, like, you know, like the broken, you know, that kind of guy. I said, this is a cowboy, and God is with me. That's what I learned from her, because the the last few years of her life, you know, she was in a lot of pain.
Mm.
She had arthritis, but she lived with a smile. She, you know, she was even at all those times, you know, imagine her lying in bed, hurting all over, and she'd write those. I said, "Mommy, you know, I have to do these and these songs," and she's like a kid. Okay, let's write these songs, and apart from that, you know, the gospel songs that she wrote and which are still sung in so many churches, and right till the end, you know. So, but yes, as a son, as a person, it was very hard. But you know, that faith thing, and then of course I had you know, my own family. You know, kids were little then. Ricky was hardly uh, maybe 2 years old when she passed away, and Angie was there. But this was something we started with her. By going into there, she blessed me to do that. She stood by me, and I wasn't quitting.
Mhm.
I think even more than me, she had a dream for me. I don't even. I've been a I'm very happy with, you know, to be around family even today.
Mhm.
I think she had a dream for me, and I think my wife Angie, I think she was dreaming a lot of things. You know, when we went into Delhi, she had this. I want to see on every newspaper and stuff like that. She used to dream that. So uh, when you have stuff like that happening around you,
So
and
you really received a lot of encouragement from your mom,
yes,
from
and then
your wife.
yes, well, it was our adventure, you know.
Yeah, it was not just Bobby
You
Cash's adventure.
no,
It
no, no,
was
no.
it was a family
It
adventure.
was a family adventure because imagine, you know, she could have said, you know, "Oh, what's this?
What's this? Are you out of your mind? You're moving the
There's
yeah.
a little child, and you know, you want to become a musician, and musicians normally didn't have a great, you know, they've not been a great advertisement, especially back then. Now, I'm not talking about the guys who became big stars, but there are a lot of musicians all around us, you know. There were a lot of people playing rock music, or, you know,
Yeah.
in fact, generally, you know, a lot of the musicians I met with, you know, when I went into Delhi as a musician, I brought in something different, you know,
Mm.
because I was well read.
Mhm.
Most people thought musicians are dropouts, or you know, they do drugs, or they're alcoholics or semi-alcoholics, and you know, they're not smart people.
Mm.
But I I kind of even in Delhi, I sort of changed that perception, you know.
Mm.
So
Here comes a man who is completely clean, sober, doesn't drink, doesn't
doesn't drink,
smoke,
and who's very
and well read.
well read, and who can talk, and you know, who knows himself, what he is. For example, when I used to sing at a lot of fancy places, I I did the 5-star circuit, and you know, the fancy clubs and stuff. But there were a lot of great bands playing there. Now they operated under a different code. Now they had to dress up a certain way. You know, they had to. There was a certain protocol. You know, you're part of the hotel staff, and so you had to come in from a different entrance. You know, and then you had to listen to the manager. With me, it was different. You know,
Mhm.
and I don't know, God's favor, and every place I went to perform, you know, even place at 5 stars. I mean, I've been part of Uber Roy's and all these different Taj and every kind of chain.
You have a
Y-
very
y-
distinctive style
yeah.
of playing.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't want to
Yeah.
interrupt you. You
Yeah.
can go
Yeah.
on.
So
Yeah.
you know, it was just that something. There was no looking back,
Mm.
going ahead, and it gave me even more confidence. So these guys, they were and they were seeing my mother's dreams, her dreams, and so it was a shared thing, you know.
It was
It was an
definitely a
adventure.
shared journey.
Yes, shared journey.
Yeah,
Yes,
you were
yes,
not alone.
yes. No,
You know.
no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Let's talk a little about your style. You have a very distinctive style,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Maybe people came after you who tried to imitate your
Yes,
style. But how did you
still.
come up with that style? How did it happen?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it happened because uh, I spent a lot of time alone. I wasn't around a lot of other musicians, you know. Growing up here, maybe during vacation time, some of my cousins we'd be, you know, they'd come to visit, and they were all good musicians, and we played together. But most of the time, all the year round, I used to be alone.
Hmm.
And of course, we had all these great records.
Hmm.
No YouTube,
No.
nothing. And I used to listen to great music. Like I had some of my favorites, you know, like Chet Atkins, and you know,
Hmm.
great guitar players. And I love jazz. So whether it's, you know, Wes Montgomery or George Benson, and then I, then I one of my uncles gave me a record by a great flamenco guitar player.
Hmm.
I fell in love with the flamenco guitar. I didn't know
Hmm.
how they played it. It sounded amazing. And then I loved apart from country music, classical music, orchestras, and Latin American music. And yes, me with my guitar, and I'd put these tracks on. And now I'd heard people playing guitar. Either they play chords, somebody would just play the lead, somebody would play bass. But here I'm alone, If I play the lead, it sounds so,
Yeah.
you know. And if I play the rhythm, there's, it's something missing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sound like, no, I didn't even know, I had how they did it. And if I heard Chet Atkins, it was such a full sound. I had no idea. And a lot of the stuff I heard was bands playing, orchestras playing. So then I heard these flamenco guitar players with their, I had no idea what the techniques were. So I started, it was just imagination. So I started thinking of my guitar. I said, this is my orchestra.
Wow.
This is my band.
So you were interpreting it just by hearing.
Just by hearing. I said, and I used to hear so many different parts. And I said, I'm going to try to play everything.
On one instrument.
I don't have a rhythm guitar player.
Right.
And if I play a melody and there's no rhythm, it sounds,
not complete.
Not complete.
Yeah.
So I picked up finger picking.
Yeah.
I met a guy who was doing a simple finger picking pattern. I said, show me how do you do it? But it was just simple finger picking.
Right.
So the point of time when everybody I met played with plectrums, just like they played hard. I started working on my finger picking a little at what somebody do. There was no YouTube, but like I said. And I started playing. And I started developing, just my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know whether it was right or wrong. Then I heard this flamenco stuff. Now, flamenco techniques are very, very, people have to go to Spain and study them. And somehow, I just, for me, the goal was not the technique. It was the end result. It's got to sound this way. I already knew inside of me what I wanted. It's like an artist, who makes a painting.
Exactly.
He has this picture. So
he's already got a picture in his mind.
And it's funny, And of course, that's where the faith I would, I'd pray.
Yeah.
I said, Lord, you bless my hand.
I'm reminded of this thing. I think it was Michelangelo who was asked, he saw a block of marble and he said, oh, Da Vinci. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But he said, what do you see? He said, I see an angel waiting to be set free.
Yeah.
Whereas other people saw just a block of marble. And that's something like you already had that thing what you, wanted to it to sound like in the end.
So for me, the guitar became more than just a guitar. There's all this stuff inside of me that I imagine, that I hear inside of me. And this is what's going to, kind of being the instrument, or this is my tool.
This is your tool, yeah.
It's going to, I'm going to convert it into sound that people will love. And I love. It has to be approved by me first, the way I want it. So, oops. No. No, I got it.
Okay. No problem. Bobby, you're doing okay, or do you want to go to
No. I'm
you
okay.
all right?
Yeah, perfect.
You want something to drink?
Perfect.
Yeah?
Perfect. Yeah. A lot of practice.
Yeah. A lot of practice. Yeah.
I think that's one of the beauties of learning music the way I did all alone.
Yeah.
It just opened up the power of imagination. You have to imagine.
Man, it opened up portals inside your head, which probably nobody can reach unless you are in that. I don't think so. Just being alone as well, but you were gifted. You were gifted.
Yeah. Otherwise,
there've been a lot of people alone.
I think this. It's your probably my brain is wired a certain way, and then again,
it is.
Yes, because when I play, I can play so many different parts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get kind of, and then I sing too.
And then you sing.
Later on, I discovered that I'm a real singer.
Right.
Initially, it was just about the guitar. And
when did you start singing?
I was always singing, but it was more as part of the guitar playing thing. You learn songs, you like songs.
Yeah.
But There were other people in the family who I thought were
Better.
far better as singers, you know.
Yeah.
I was more into, and I love playing the guitar.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, you know, I love country music. When I was growing up,
Mhm.
you know, my voice had matured. I used to hear these great singers and and a lot of them deep baritone voices, you know,
Mhm.
whether it's Merle Haggard or Johnny Cash and George Jones. And I, you know, and I just loved that.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure which way my voice would go. But when I grew up, my voice matured. I discovered that God gave me the perfect
Mhm.
voice for a country singer, like a classic
Mhm.
country voice.
Wow.
So that's another thing, you know. So a lot of people say, "Hey, you've got a, you know, great voice." I said, "No credit for that. God gave me that." I just
And
realized
this
that.
voice has taken you places.
Yes. So
You
so
arrived at Tamworth Country Music
yes.
Festival, and you played at that festival.
The first,
What emotional challenges did it pose you being an Indian singer, like a country musician from India?
you know, first of all, when back then,
Mhm.
that was 2003. If you said there's a country music singer from India, they think this is some kind of a funny act. It's a comedy thing. Yeah, actually, really, really.
Yeah.
I remember just around that time there was a guy from Japan who came to Tamworth and they called him the Japanese cowboy. It was like a funny man,
Mm.
you know, dressed up more cowboy than any cowboy. A rhinestone, everything, you know. You know, he's like out of a movie, and you know, it was like a comedy act. So here's another guy from India. But when people heard me first, initially when they said, "Where?" I said, "I'm an Indian." They'd ask me, they say, "Oh, what tribe are you from, brother?"
Really?
Yeah, are you Cherokee?
Uh,
They think I'm Native American Indian.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. Then I'd say, "No, I'm the cricket playing Indian, like Sachin Tendulkar, you know." Yeah, but
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think again, as they say, you know, when it's how you look at things. For me,
Mhm.
I said this is going to be my biggest advantage. Like I said, I was ready.
Mhm.
I I could sing and sound like the real deal. And later on, when I went to Texas,
Mhm.
I went to the heartland of country music. I performed at a place called Billy Bob's, uh, which is the world's biggest honky tonk. And then I went and performed at in a town called Stephensville, which is called the cowboy capital of the world. And at their old, which is like they allow only the very purest country music artists there. So there I was, and you know, here I'm getting standing. It was just it was just the real. It was real, but because I was different, I think it became my biggest advantage. That's why they said this guy's one in a billion.
True.
Because there's a lot of guys from Texas or Australia who do great country music,
Mhm.
but there was only one Bobby Cash.
1 in a billion.
Yeah, from the foothill of the Himalayas,
Mhm.
and you know, straight away they compared me with the greats. They said, "Oh, this guy's like a great like Charlie Pride or Ray Price and one of those guys." He's a, so, and then when I went and performed in Nashville again, I got a standing ovation, and the head of the Country Music Association, he said, "I mean, he's the genuine article." So I
So,
think with all of that, that helped overcome a lot of, uh, you know, I I think I was kind of confident, and it shut up a lot of people. That's all I can say. I never heard, I sort of shut myself. I was just doing my thing.
mm,
Like the first year at Tamworth, here I was started busking on the street. I'm just doing what I always do, what I do in my room, what I was doing in the rodeo. It made no difference. And I said, let the music do the talking. Like in cricket, they say, well, it's like let my bat talk.
Yeah. Now, during all this adventure trip,
Yeah.
did you also have dark days?
I, you know, throughout the, especially this adventure trip was great fun. Okay, 10 days. You go to a festival, and I took a friend along with me. My deal with the people who did the documentary and who invited me was said, I've got a friend with me. We'll both go along, and I told my friend, we'll have a great time. We'll we It's like a paid holiday. We'll attend a great country music festival, and maybe I'll get to play there. I'll play busk, and we'll hear great musicians. We love country music. He also loved country music, and 8-10 days we'll be back home and back to our normal lives. Okay, that's what it was. So no dark days during the festival, except and it was like full on. Except maybe missing home and the kids. Apart from a great time, but then suddenly after that, I I'm kind of my life changes after that. Here I'm living a very very settled life in Delhi with Angie and my kids. I'm doing well. I've got great gigs in Delhi, and I travel around. I already have a couple of indie. I'm already a well-known guy, everything, and suddenly it's- I became one of the brightest stars in that festival, the star of the festival. And here I meet this gentleman who says, "What can I do for you?" This American farmer who lived there, who became very close to me, and then suddenly I'm back, and I'm supposed to go back to Australia to record my first album, and what was to be a one-time visit. Now my life is about to change to something which I hadn't planned for or expected. And I'd never even ever thought of Australia. The Nashville thing for me would have been, and all through these years, I used to meet people from when I was playing in Delhi from the U.S. Brother, you have to come to Nashville. We'll fix it. I said no, I'm happy here. I had all kinds of offers, but I said no, I'm okay. And suddenly I'm in Australia, and suddenly Australia, by the time I come back, it's like all the roots that I have here, they're being
Pulled out.
pulled out. And suddenly I'm due to be back in Australia, and I don't know what's going to happen. This is where uncertainty comes in. And I'm stepping into a different level of life. When you talk to people, it's great. Wow, you're going to be, you've got a record deal. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. For me, that's where the real the inside turmoil came. And I came back, and then maybe 3-4 months later, okay, I said, okay, first trip, when I'm going to record my album, we'll again make it a family adventure. We go there, I record my first album. Again, it's great because we're together. I'm recording my album. And again, something new happening. And in the meantime, there was a documentary that shot. They planned to release the documentary and the album together. And then suddenly the album gets we are back home. And then I'm booked for now suddenly life becomes very different. And I'm booked for a big tour in Australia after the album. So again, I leave home this time because touring is a different thing. You can't do it with kids and family. And I'm out on the road. And then maybe 6-8 weeks I'm gone. And we are touring all around the country, and I'm headlining, and I'm doing venues, and I'm all sold out. My first album is out. It makes it to the music charts. And then the documentary Indian Cowboy went out. It gets great reviews. That's on ABC television. Later on, Discovery Channel picks it up. And then I'm suddenly caught up in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a whole crew there. There's people who's I sort of I make money, and there's people, very good people, who look after stuff there. They fix up tours, they manage me, and suddenly I'm shunting back and forth. Then there's this great pressure on me
Mm-hmm.
to come and live
In Australia.
It makes sense. Anybody, obviously, and anybody would say, well, hey.
And how did you feel about it?
I never wanted that.
You didn't want to?
Never wanted that. Never wanted that. I mean, I'd write from people saying, we'd buy you a place and, everything. And because I'm right there at the top of the chain, and if I live there and become an Australian artist, then I'm on another level instead of just a, but I didn't want that. So that was,
What held you back? Because from worldly sense, you ask any
yes.
normal person, say, hey, you'll be
crazy.
taken care of future. You're crazy to let this go. Yeah.
And the same thing, when I went to the US, I got nominated for a country music award. The next step was, even my people in Australia said, let's go to the US. And I had a great response in the US. The labels wanted to sign me up. Fortunately, Australia, I was still operating very independently. In America, the US, the thing was,
it's a totally different ballgame.
Oh, they're signing up. They own you.
They own you, yeah.
Right from the clothes you wear, they'll give you millions. They'll invest millions on you. I had those kind of deals that could have made me. I mean, I've got documented proof to show that.
I mean, if you had signed that, you would have given up all your rights.
All my rights, even with my family.
Your family.
Everything.
They'll tell you when to breathe, when to eat, when to sleep,
now,
when to get up.
For me, the most important thing is, like I said, what we had was a beautiful adventure together.
Yeah, you started off with a beautiful adventure.
Yes.
With the car breaking down 6 times on the road to Delhi.
And then, and doing things the way we want to do it, living the way we want to.
And you never wanted it to become so big.
No.
That it takes your freedom away.
That's the most important thing to me. My integrity, my freedom. And I said, for me, the most important, I knew what's the most important thing in my life.
What was that?
I knew it was my God, it was my family, and it was for my heart and my body to be where I wanted to be.
So when you were touring, let's talk about when you were touring Australia.
Yeah.
Was there any point, now you were doing it alone, your family was back in India, right?
Yes.
Did you at any point have that kind of temptation experience, coming that you had a struggle to say no?
Never. That's one of the things.
So you were never tempted?
No.
Was anytime anything offered that was, or it was only this material things, like house, future, and come and live, those kind of things?
Everything was offered. Everything, you name it,
Everything was offered.
Everything was offered.
Drugs were available.
Everything. Yes. I mean, the guys I toured with. I mean, I've always been. I had bands touring with me too. My backup band and everything. After the gig, everybody in wine late, and I was never the kind of guy to shut myself in a room. They loved me, and they'd be doing drugs and everything. But
So how did it look like after the gig ended? Did you spend time with them? Did you socialize and hang out with them, or what did you do?
You know what we do? If we were out in the country town and we'd be staying at a country motel or something, and that's what. So we just come back. We just be sitting outside. They're doing this stuff. There, I'm sitting with my guitar and just strumming. But I was never part of what they were doing. It wasn't even a temptation. Let me put it that
So
way.
it didn't affect you at all. You had people around doing all
Yes,
this
yes, yes,
stuff,
yes, yes, yes.
but
Never affected me.
you were totally unfazed.
Totally unfazed, and that's what amazed him.
Mm.
That's why even if you talk with them today, it's it was like, and it only made them admire me and love me even more.
Mm.
And many of them wanted what I had. So how do you do this?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do this? And you know, and yet you get up there on stage, you're on fire.
Mm-hmm.
My band used to say, when you're on stage, you don't need us. I mean, you even the crowds. So I had to, even when I had a band with me, I had to do big part of my show all alone. So we just want to hear you. And then later I'd get the band.
So
Because
here,
it was like electric, you know,
yeah.
there was so much energy.
So here's this guy from India who comes
Yeah.
along and has such a unique playing style,
Yeah.
plus your whole band
Yeah.
in yourself. Did you ever face any jealousy?
Oh, yes. Yes, 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 yes. A lot of time, you know. Oh, I mean, that happens, you know. A lot of people, not everybody's, you know, when people are jealous of you, you be extra nice to them, you know.
Did they ever did anybody ever try to pull you down or play tricks on you?
Oh, many have tried. Many have tried. And later on, they were ashamed. Yes. Because somehow, as things turned around, I ended up doing favors for them. And, you know, somehow it always turned to my advantage. Nobody could pull me down. Many tried, even here in India.
Can you tell of one incident without taking any names?
Well, even when I was early years, you know, when for example, when I was recording for Magnus Sound, a lot of my stuff was being sabotaged, you know. For example, making a music video and it was also hurtful, you know, because so why? You know, I never spoke about it, but my wife knew about it, you know. There were things that should have happened, which just didn't happen. But I think that's where the faith thing comes in. I had a choice. I made some choices in life which helped me. One of the choices that it's a decision
Mm-hmm.
which I still make. And I think sometimes we have to make it every day that I'm never going to worry. I'm never going to hold certain things in my heart. I'm a human being,
Mm-hmm.
but I can sleep it over and
Let it go.
just let it go. So it's that let go thing. Let go thing, you know. Maybe, you know, when they make a movie about me, maybe, you know, they'll have to show some of the things and more. I've had stuff like that, you know.
Mm.
I've had a lot of those things happen, you know, which have not even, you know, I've shielded my family from stuff like that, you know. I said, there's no point because I've got over it. You know, if I tell her, they'll brood about it. I mean, I've had, I mean, I remember once, for example, in Delhi, things to deal with normal people don't. I remember one day in Delhi, I was already, everybody knew me, you know, well known. One day at lunchtime, I get a call. We were having lunch at our apartment in Delhi. The night before that, when I'm driving back from a show, suddenly the bang, and my windshield just shatters. Okay. And it's dark. There's a friend with me in the car, but I said, let's not stop. You know, somebody's thrown a rock or something. I said, maybe somebody tried to shoot us or what. It shattered. So we drove home,
Mm-hmm.
and I came back and I told her about it. This is what happened. And again, I have that sense of peace, not phased at all, strangely enough.
Mm.
Anyway, I said, we'll go. I'll take it to the workshop. We'll get it fixed.
You
Next
didn't
day,
report it.
no, I didn't report it. Next day, we were having lunch. The phone rings. Those days, you had those landline phones. Pick it up. There's somebody on the phone speaking in Hindi. Very, very, very abusive. And he says, yesterday, you see what we did yesterday? That was just a warning that we are watching you. You were coming back and we busted your windscreen. We know you've got 2 little kids. They're small then. We'll behead your kids.
Really? They said that?
Yeah. Come to such and such place. Tomorrow you'll be driving past. Put, I don't know how many lakhs. Bring it to that place. So, something like that. What do you do?
What did you do?
What did I do? I told her, I said, let's pray. That's where the faith thing comes in. That's it. I knew a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't advise everybody to do this. I said, go, report it.
Yeah.
But I said, we'll just pray, then we'll see.
So you didn't report it to the police?
No.
You didn't tell anybody else?
No.
You and your wife, you just prayed.
We prayed I called my aunt, who was a very praying person. I said, this is what's happened. She said, I'm also praying. Just trust the Lord. And that very same evening, I said, I'm going to drive. I'll go that way.
Same way where you were hit?
And where these people said they're going to be.
Okay.
All right.
Or they wanted you to come with that 20 lakh rupees?
Yes. So, okay. Again, this was me. Now, it was scary.
I
it
bet.
was scary, especially when it's your kids. Went out at the same time. She also said, should you? I said, no, don't worry. My God is with me. There was nobody there. Nobody ever showed up after that.
Wow.
So there's been stuff like this, and then later on, I
just to put a button on that story, did you ever hear back from these people?
Never.
They never called you?
Never called.
And you got no communication from them?
Never after that. I went back the same. Never.
Wow.
That was it. And then I told you about my aunt. She was a very praying person, and when she was, when I spoke to her, after a few days, she said, you'll understand this, Vikram. She said, well, I was praying. She said, God showed me a vision. You were driving. Past this point, there was a certain tree there. And there was a bunch of guys waiting. But when your car came, there was so much light around it. It was bright light that these guys, they ran away in terror. Now, I didn't know that, but she saw that while she's praying.
While she was praying?
Yes. So, when you experience things like that, you just let go, So, I mean, I've had, we could talk, there's so many things like that,
Did you ever, after this incident, did you ever think of leaving the city?
No. Never leaving the city. We only left Delhi when suddenly this beautiful people, I can say, happened. And suddenly I became so popular in Australia, unexpected, So that's the time I said, there's nothing for me in Delhi. And I moved the family back to Dehradun, where my family was, my sisters were. I said, I'm not going to leave you alone in Delhi, and there's no point. So we moved back. Then I started off, and since then I've been based. And then there was all this time, I had this choice to live in Australia. Now, Angie was ready for it.
Okay.
Yeah. For her, it would have been great. I'm sure my kids, they you could have to, but I never wanted to. It was never inside of me. Even though I was offered it, but her thing was okay wherever we are together, and she wasn't born in India. She was born in Africa, grew up there.
Where?
She was born in Africa, but my roots, and so much of my family is here. The memories, my parents, everybody, and there's so many people here. So my roots are deep here. I said, I said, I don't have to, to be in Australia or America. Like I said, it's inside of me. It was always that,
Yeah.
So-
Let's talk about the documentary, The Indian Cowboy,
Yeah.
1 in a Billion.
Yeah.
How did that making of the film? It was, you said that a crew accompanied you.
What
right?
happened was,
Yeah.
This is early 2002, January. I was performing at, I think I had a show at Uberoy's. I had a contract there. I used to play there certain nights. And at the end of when I'd finished my performance, just before that, I'm probably doing the last song. There's a guy who walked in, and I think I was probably playing Killing Me Softly, one of those songs, and doing my fancy guitar stuff. And I finished. That was the last song. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, bye. See you tomorrow." And as I was walking out, this guy stopped me. He said, "Mate, that was brilliant." And I said, I could tell he's an Aussie. So thank you very much. And I said, "You want to hear more? You can be back." He said, "I'm staying at the hotel." I said, "I'm on again tomorrow night. So I'll come by." And I said, "Well, I got to leave now." And he said, I said, "What are you doing in town?" He said, "I'm doing a shoot for ESPN something, some sports show."
Yeah.
So he was producing that or something, and something to do with cricket. Cool. Then next day, again, I had my show there, and I went there, and there's this guy again. And he's sitting there. And I said, "Hi," I started playing. Then after a little while, there's a close friend of mine who was also like my, I used to call him my right-hand man, who was also into television. This guy comes in. His name is Manish, and apparently they know each other. So they were working on the same, shoot or something. Again, I did my set. Then I went to these guys, and I said, "Manish, what brings you here?" He said, "No, we were at work together. I was with Colin, and he mentioned that he met a brilliant musician, and then so he said, Bobby." He said, "Of course, he's a friend of mine." So he said, "I want to talk to Bobby." So we had a conversation, and this guy said, "Have you heard of the Tamworth Country Music Festival?" I said, "You kidding me? Every Australian who I meet talks of the great Tamworth Country Music Festival, and they say, 'Mate, you got to come and play there.'"
Yeah.
I said, "Are you one of those guys?" He said, "No, I'm a serious filmmaker, and it would be so nice if you came there, and we film you. We make a documentary." And this is, a few months back, 9/11 had happened. He said, "It's a great story that how, music connects people."
Right.
So that kind of interesting. I said, "Okay." And I said, "I meet a lot of people who give me this thing about coming over." And I said, "Sure." I said, "Manish, be in touch with him.
Right.
If you got something." And that was it, And he and Manish must have been in there. Now, this is 2002, January, and in November, October.
Yeah.
suddenly Manish calls me up and he says, get ready for Australia. I said, what happened?
Mm.
You see, you remember that guy calling? We have been in touch. He's fixed up for you to come too.
Right.
Tamworth, with your guitar and,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just film your
Mm-hmm.
experiences there, as a very talented Indian
Yeah.
musician. And they'll have a great, like human interest story. And,
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
And when this Aussie guy told me, Colin
Mhm.
said, you come, I said, I'll make sure that Manish is with me.
Mm-hmm.
Then I told Manish, I said, great, we'll go now. It's like a paid holiday and that kind of thing. And so these guys, before this festival happens in January, late December, these guys came to Dehradun. They came to Delhi. I was still based in Delhi. They filmed me in Delhi. They said, we want to film you in your hometown. So the crew came here. They did some filming in Dehradun at my home and, just to get a
Mm-hmm.
fix. And then after that, they flew back to Australia. And then Manish and I, and they gave they gave a camera to Manish.
To film you.
On the way.
Okay.
All right.
Mhm.
On the flight.
Mm-hmm.
So he had me on camera.
Mm-hmm.
We landed at Sydney airport and there's this whole crew waiting for me. So it's like right from there, I had this crew. I had to live with this crew. And then we drove down to Sydney to this festival.
Oh, this was something different from you being on stage and playing the guitar. Now you had cameras in your face, like following you.
Well, these days you have
Did-
reality TV.
Yeah, yeah. How did you feel about that?
Well, I said, it's like, I said, I wrote, do your job, I'll do mine.
You didn't feel odd or anything, a conscious.
No,
Hey, oh, I have to behave in a certain way.
no,
You
no.
got cameras rolling 24/7.
No. I said, you do your thing. I just kind of shut it out. I knew they were there, and besides, it was very spectacular, like an adventure, because here's this unknown guy. Because it also, when I went into
Yeah.
Tamworth, that got a lot of eyeballs. Who's this guy?
Mm.
He's going around. He's got cameras all around him. That itself became a talking point, which was vindicated by the way I sang and I performed. So I was already a star
Yeah.
when I walked in there with those cameras.
Yeah.
Now here's this busker who's singing.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
there's so many out there,
Mhm.
but this guy who's busking and singing, he's got a crew around him,
Yeah.
and a very professional and fancy gear.
How did that impact you, having cameras and getting so much attention?
Why? It was fun. For me, I had my guitar.
Yeah.
Once I have my guitar in my hand, it's cool. It doesn't matter. That makes me very good. I'm singing and
So at no point you let it get to your head.
no.
Like just a normal person, you get so much attention.
For me, the simple thing I always had, it was about the music, what I was doing. It's like a prayer. I say, Lord, you've given me this gift. The least I can do is make somebody smile and happy. That's my attitude as a performer. So even when I was singing on the street and all these people, thronging with people, they stop and listen, and they're enjoying it. I say, well, it's worth it. And we're having a lot of fun and see a lot of interesting people, and get to hear a lot of music all around us. And here I am with my guitar. I mean, if I hadn't been doing this here, I would have been in my room with the guitar. I've got cameras. So, if you see the documentary, you see the spontaneous energy, and you can see I'm genuinely doing just, and that kind of thing. It just flows out to people. So the cameras didn't make any difference. I had my guitar. I was singing. I was doing what I loved.
And also, you went outside of India, abroad, at a time when we didn't have so many Indian musicians going out.
No, not at all.
And
I was the first one in Australia.
So there was great expectations from you.
Yes.
How did you manage the pressures of that title? The first export of international export.
Yes. So it was, it's like when I came back, then suddenly people in India, even in Australia, initially, my initial fans were only Australians. Then suddenly, when the Indian community there, they discovered this guy's an Indian, it's like then I had a whole, oh, ye to hamara hai.
Yeah.
This is our guy. This is our guy. And yes, and I mean, back then in those early days, because there weren't too many Indians who were making a mark, so I had a lot of people would interview me, and sometimes I'd get crazy. I remember one. There's a reporter in Bombay. We had a presser, and he said, "You're an Indian." I said, "I'm true blue Indian." That
Yeah.
He said, "Then why do you play Western cowboy music? How can you do that as an Indian?" I said, "That's a great question you asked me." I said, "But I'll answer it. Do me a favor. Go to Mr. Sachin Tendulkar. He's the greatest. He's called the god of cricket. Ask him, why does he play a British game?" And I said, "How do you feel when you see an English bowler bowling to him and he smacks him out of the park?" He said, "Probably you cheer the loudest." I do. I said, "And why does he do that?" I said, "I'm here before you. I'm doing cowboy music." And I said, you have all these Western singers and all these guys. And these guys, how do you feel it, when your own man hits it out of the park?
Very good response.
Yes.
Very good response. I'm sure he didn't say anything after that.
No. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you had all these things, and there was a lot of expectation,
Right.
Well, you know what happens? Sometimes expectation can lead to a lot of, if you're just living for people's expectations.
Yeah.
And if I had just been living for, trying to shoulder that, then I should have been in Nashville, making a great name for myself, winning awards after. That was never my goal and stuff,
Right.
I know a lot of people, if they look at me, they say, "Where's Bobby Cash?
Yeah.
He should have been there." But I look back, I thank God. Thank God that I didn't stay in Nashville.
Yeah.
That was never, it wasn't what I wanted. These things happened to me as, they just came my way. They brought something beautiful in my life.
Yeah.
They never became a trap for me. Honestly, we just started on an adventure. And to be very frank, that point of time, when we went out for this adventure, I was under a lot of, it was a need. My family needed me. I needed to make a living.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing I was qualified. And I'll put it simply.
Yeah.
I'm glad it turned out the way it did. I never had to go and ask anybody for anything. I believe that God brought me allowed me to be in this and blessed me in this. But I was very, very kind of grounded. I knew this is as far as I want to go. And
it was very clear in your head what you wanted, how far you wanted to go, where you wanted to be.
Where I wanted to be.
Yeah, there was
who
no
I wanted
doubt.
to be with.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes courage is not only facing adversity, sometimes it's also facing success. If somebody offers you $1 million contract in the world, that's another kind of courage to be able to walk away from it. And there's another kind of courage where it's like you have nothing. There's also another kind of courage. Now, this is where the faith thing comes in. In my life, in my walk of faith with God, There's another kind of courage I've had. Sometimes it's just burning bridges in your life on things which could take you make them as your support system or something. I'll give you an example. For the time when my family was threatened, my kids were threatened, I had the resources to pick up the phone and call. I was in a position to call anybody, say, "Hey, we'll take care of it." But I chose to trust in the Lord, and a lot of the things which might have become my earthly support, and I thank God for all those things. But many times I chose to
Depend on God.
depend on God and sort of burn those bridges. And I wanted a life where I could. It's a great thing. I just shared this story with you. How I just prayed and what happened. I think that's the kind of life I wanted. Where I know God is real and the people He puts in my life, He sends them. People are very important. It's God and people.
So, during your journey, what has been your biggest struggle?
Yeah, probably. This is very personal, and I don't know if it makes sense to anybody out there, but for me, it's always been making those decisions and trying that wouldn't take me away from my family for too long or as little as possible. And this the entertainment business is very, very demanding in its own way. There's so much that is expected, and there's so many people who want you all the time. So, kind of balancing that out with so many commitments, and I thank God for His grace and His. I just to kind of make you understand. I remember after spending 6 years, like 6 and very, very exciting years, when I was constantly touring without a break. And in those 6 years, my life was, I mean, it was like I was in a movie, living the life of a country music star. Like you see in a movie, from town to town, and, being on stage and with my guitar and, fans and signing autographs, pictures taken, and doing interviews and television. It's very exciting that way. So easy to get caught up in it. But doing 6 years of that, 6 years without a break, I'd just be home for a few weeks, and then everything is packed up. And like I said, that's always it's always been hard for me to be away from home. So it was like 6 or maybe 7 years of touring that way. I remember on a flight back home, and I was just kind of, well, you call it prayer, but it's like I'm talking to the Lord, though even though 6, 7 years, I'm not that long, but I said I want a break. I don't want to do this. I've enjoyed it, and make it easier for me. And I tell you, the way things panned out, the people might have said, "Oh, suddenly what's happened is like breaks on you." No, I got exactly what I wanted. I was able to choose, and I still do that over a period of time, and I could probably do less, earn more, and be intact have the joy of being at home, and the joy of bringing joy to so many other people. But I think that's always been a big struggle. It's never not having enough to do,
Hmm.
but like I remember during the lockdown and the COVID, a lot of my artist friends, many of them were depressed, and because they weren't moving around, they weren't doing gigs as they would have liked to.
Hmm.
But I think that was one of the most beautiful, happiest times of my life.
Because
Yes,
you were together with your family.
together. And what I
You had
love
your
to
guitar.
yes, I could play music for hours, still play it.
So the biggest happiness for you is being together with your family, having
Yes,
your guitar.
yes, simple things, getting time to read, and it might sound very, very, like this guy's like a kid, but that's it. That's been the biggest. I mean, I could tell you a lot of tall tales. Oh, this is what happened, and so and so did this, and I had this big temptation. I was offered this big thing, and I had to say no to it. And it was a big struggle. I was offered this big contract, and I had to spend sleepless. And there are certain things which were already settled inside of me, and they're still as settled. And I think it's great to live. When people look at me, say, I mean, you're the same guy. We met 10 years back. I wouldn't have stayed this way.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have sounded the same, looked the same. It's just that. It, let go. I live in the let go life. But yes, this has always been a thing with me, and this is something that I would always strive for,
Hmm.
even now. And probably even my family wouldn't have understood that this was my thing. I've had my kids tell me
Hmm.
sometimes, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do that? If you had this opportunity, you had all these offers, you had all these things. But for me,
Like
that
the
was a
Bible says, what if you gain the whole world and lose your
lose your
soul?
own soul. You've said it. So, and that's not just necessarily in terms of going to heaven or hell,
Hmm.
but it has a much wider application. I could have gained the whole world, but it's part of me. And no, I'm glad. Especially, I'm glad that when the kids were growing up, I was around.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they were, who are you? Where do you show up from?
How's your relationship with your kids?
I think they're so used to having me around. I'm just there. Just there.
Always accessible.
The very fact
Hmm.
that they're still with us.
Right.
You know, I mean, my prayer is, I always pray that uh, I'd be very blessed if these kids are never ever far away from me, because I've seen a lot of uh, parents, and families. Life runs by so fast, and you hardly get to see the parents, hardly get to see them. They might be doing well. So for me, my prayer is that my kids are never far away. They have their own lives, they do well, everything, but
Is there a word of caution you would get? Let's say your son was to go out on this journey by himself.
yes,
What is the word of caution you would share with him?
yeah. Well, if he goes out, and never forget where you came from, and there's a God and there's a people that God has put in your life.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people who'll come and go. Stick to your roots and where you came from. the way you're grounded, your foundations.
Mhm.
You always know where you came from, and you always remember where you're always wanted and really loved and welcome, and that's your home.
What would you tell your kids or young people, when they're out in the world and they're lacking courage or are anxious?
Yeah.
What would you tell them?
Well, the first thing I would tell them, if you really like that there's good God,
Mhm.
turn to Him and the loved ones that God has put in your life, parents, brothers, sisters, your own family,
Mhm.
and special friends. Don't just be in a corner. Don't try to work it out yourself.
Don't try to work it out yourself. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Don't try to work it out yourself.
What I hear from you is that you draw all your courage. You might have, inherited that from your mom, but you draw all your courage from the Lord. That's what I'm
Yes,
hearing. And
yes,
I'm reminded of the story of David, when he
yes,
went up to face Goliath.
yes,
And Goliath tells him, you think I'm a dog that you come to
yeah,
me with stick and stones?
yeah,
And he said, no, I come in the name of the Lord God Almighty.
yes,
And today he's going to give you into
yes.
my hands. And that's the kind of thing that your faith and your courage is anchored in a living God.
That's a story that has had a very, very profound.
Really?
Yeah, I, I think
Yeah.
probably the first. Once I was asked to preach in church when I was very young. This is
Mhm.
probably the text I preached on. My
Mhm.
first ever
Wow.
time I preached in church. Yes, but and then the people. I mean, your family is a God-given thing. I remember in the early years when in that old car I'm talking about, the brake failure car.
Yeah.
Ricky wasn't still born then.
Mhm.
Her, me, and little Sarah, she used to sit in between us,
Mhm.
and just she's sitting there.
Yeah.
Probably she had her little hand on the
Yeah.
gear shift. Now, just looking at her, a little child, that gave me so much strength. She was there, but even that little child. Then Ricky came along.
Mm.
Just being with them would strengthen me. They became such a reason. I think family is all the right reasons for you to move ahead. That's what I mean. It's not just you.
Somebody, remember the time when you first stepped out and there's somebody out there who feels too different and feels who doesn't fit in and wants to take the first step. What would you tell that young person?
First of all, you're in a great place. If you feel different and you are different, you know, I think you'll have. That's half your battle won.
So you being different is your strength.
Always, and it works the same for everybody. You just spoke of little David. You know, everybody was singing one song. His brothers who were trained warriors, entire army, but this guy steps up. He's dressed different. He's a shepherd boy with his weapons are different. His talk is different. He looks different, and he brings down a 9 foot giant or whatever. I think that's. And these days, everybody, whether you're a filmmaker, you're trying to come up with something different, and you're trying to write a new script, or songwriter trying to come up with a different song or different composition. Well, hey, already blessed in being different. Isn't that wonderful? I think my greatest strength has been that I was different, and it wasn't a conscious effort at being different. It's just that discovering the difference, what makes you unique, and each one has that. I believe that each one has that. Thank God I discovered it, and I I kind of built on it. I learned to recognize it, and learn to use it as a stepping stone, or rather, not as a hindrance in my life.
But as a stepping stone.
Yes, as a stepping stone, and of course, not to trample anybody in the process.
Mhm.
Or not try to steal somebody else's identity. Be that one. People tell you follow your dream. Yes, it's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
But if your dream is different, so much the better. Sometimes we think it's our own dream. We are trying to follow somebody else's dream. We got to know, look down deep inside. And if we look deep down inside, we find that our dream is absolutely unique. Yeah, the results might be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You might become a big star, you might become a great writer. But when you're unique, your journey will also be unique. If it's your own unique dream, it will be a different journey. Might get you to the same place. It might get you to that Grammy Award or an Oscar Award or whatever. Might put you at the head of a corporation. But because you're unique, your path will also be unique. I think that's what I recognize. I had to walk to a different beat, march to the beat of a different drummer.
March to the beat of a different
yes,
drum.
otherwise, yes.
Yes. What is the purpose of life? Now, I'm not talking about individual, but we here on a. What is the purpose of life? Why are we here?
You know, we're not here because of ourselves, first of all. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Everybody has their own outlook. I believe we are made in the image of God. I believe you're here because God has made us his family. We're here so that we can have a relationship with our Creator. We can love him and we can love his other children on earth. And because he has made us in his image, we have the same abilities or his nature. He's a creator, so he's made us creative. He's love, so he's made us people who love.
Mhm.
He's good, so he's made us as who do good and bring about good. I mean, that's the real purpose.
Mhm.
And he's blessed us with talents and abilities and this creative thing. Sky's the limit. Live life. That's the
What
purpose.
live life? Beautiful. What would you tell somebody who doesn't believe in this God that you believe in? Um, how would you say how living with this God has impacted your
It
life?
has. It has. It has because it made things so much easier for me. Because I mean, I realized a long time back that I needed him. If there's somebody out there who's got it worked out, who's born strong, who's I realized that I'm not that strong. I realized that I was weak. But that wouldn't stop me because he makes me strong. I depend on his strength.
Mm-hmm.
So if I would just say, no matter how good you are, how strong you are, or how weak you are, it's always good to have somebody who's bigger and stronger watching your back. Because we have our limits, he doesn't. It gives me a great sense of security to know he's watching my back. And even if I fail, it doesn't matter. Even if I fall, somebody bigger than me will pick me up. Sometimes we look at people and human beings, they can let us down. They're like us.
Mm-hmm.
They might love us, but sometimes they're just helpless as we are.
What advice do you have for aspiring musicians?
Aspiring musicians,
Mhm.
very simple. Practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Practice, practice,
Yeah,
practice.
practice. I still do.
Yeah.
But, you know, first of all, I recognize, I think music is a very, very special gift.
Mhm.
Millions and billions of people, but there's something, I mean, I think God is always partial to musicians, He's given something special. And like they say, a picture says more than 1,000 words, but what a song can do is beyond everything,
Beyond anything, yeah.
beyond anything. It's just
Mhm.
like music is a bridge to your memories, to your life. It just I can do a whole talk on that.
Mhm.
But if you are blessed with the gift of music, recognize that it's something very special you have.
Mhm.
It's a gift. Not everybody has that. Yes, anybody, everybody can appreciate and love music, but to aspiring musicians, discover that gift and flow with that gift,
Mhm.
nurture it, and realize that the gift is not just for you. Share it,
Share it.
but there's more to it. I recognize that it's a gift. I thank God for it, and it's not limited to me. It's just spread it around, and I, be the best. Like my dad used to say,
Mhm.
"We play the guitar, be the best in the world." I took that up.
You took that seriously.
I took that seriously, and back then, oh, you know, for a boy in Dehradun,
Mhm.
Indian boy in Dehradun, to think he could play like the best guitar players in the world.
Hmm.
I took that up. I said, I can. I can. And today I believe it. It's not
Mhm.
boasting. But you have to be very honest with yourself.
Right.
You have to be your biggest critic and your biggest teacher. So I can say, yes,
Mhm.
I'm right up there with the best in the world. I thank God for that. And I kind of took that up.
Well, I can vouch for that. I've never seen any other guitar play with your unique style. Nowhere, either on television or YouTube, anywhere. You've got a very distinct style. And
It's,
like you said, you recognize that talent early on and you nurtured it.
yes. And of course, little thing, listen to good people, good mentors.
Mhm.
I mean, I when I was, we had very little tools except for the records. There was nobody
Right.
to show.
Mhm.
But if you find somebody,
Mhm.
it, it, it'll it'll save you so much time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really teach as such.
Mhm.
My Anybody wants to learn music, my son, he's a great teacher. So, but for me, I just tell people, watch me get inspired,
Mhm.
and you can learn so much. But back then,
Mhm.
it was just my ears.
And your
But
imagination.
there's so many tools now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether it's technology, whether it's
Mhm.
internet, whether it's
Yeah.
so go for it. And for me, I play music because it's a gift,
Right.
and I appreciate it. I
Mhm.
enjoy it, and I can be in a room alone. Or I can be with one or 10 or ten
Yeah.
thousand. Just like that song I sing, my guitar comes alive in my hand. Well, that's it. It's
Let's play a quick fire round. Four
Yeah.
quick
Yeah. All
questions.
right. Oh, that's a tricky one. Never done that. Okay.
One fear you had to face recently.
Oh, recently, how recent? That's a tough one. I'm a fearful person. Angie, can you help me with that?
I guess you're a man
Yeah,
without fear.
really, really.
Yeah.
In many ways,
Yeah.
I've always had a, a show,
Hmm.
but I haven't had that recently.
Okay.
My nail breaking off.
Uh, it happened recently.
No, it's not happened recently.
Yeah. Oh, that's your fear. Your nail breaking off during a show.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Second one. One belief that's carried you through.
Oh, very simple.
Hmm. You said it already.
Yes, God will perfect that which concerns me. It'll always come through for me.
Good. Next, one act of courage you're proud of.
Mm. All right.
Yeah.
Carrying out a gas cylinder which is on flames
Hmm.
out of our kitchen.
Wow. The gas
and
bottle was on fire.
yes,
And you carried it out with your bare hands.
bare hands, and took it out to the roof, out in the open.
Crazy.
This is in an apartment in Delhi. Yeah,
Oh.
I think that was a brave thing.
How did it catch fire?
I don't know what happened when
Yeah.
suddenly, just she screamed that, it's
And you reacted immediately.
immediately,
instantly. Yeah.
instantly.
All right. That's a great one.
I'll give you the example.
One line of lyric that defines your spirit.
There's a song I wrote it. I'm just a country boy, and I don't want no fancy things. I'm just a country boy, and I've got a simple heart. I don't want no fancy things. All I need is a little smile to turn me on.
Beautiful.
That's a song I wrote. It's called
You
Singing
wrote
Story.
it yourself?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
I'm just a country boy, and I have got a simple heart, and I don't want no fancy things. All I need is a little smile to turn me on.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Something like that, yeah.
Now, looking back at your journey from a boy with a guitar in Dehradun to standing ovations in US, Nashville, playing at Tamworth Country Music Festival, what's the one truth that has held you together through it all?
I wrote a song, it's called I'm Not Alone. And I think that's it. I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
I'm not alone. My God is with me. And He stands by me through it all.
Beautiful.
Whether Tamworth or Nashville or Dehradun.
Yes. Thank you, Bobby. You said it beautifully. You're not alone. And ladies and gentlemen, if that has stirred something inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody. And if you found this podcast worth anything, then please like, subscribe, share it. And if somebody is lacking courage today, share it with that person. Bobby's life has been one of adventure, like he said. It started with adventure, and he knew exactly what he wanted. Love God, love people. And that's beautiful. With that note, I will say goodbye. Thank you, Bobby, for being with us here.
Thank you.
And
Adios.
wish you all the best also for your upcoming projects. And ladies and gentlemen, you take care. Stay strong, stay courageous. Tune in next time. Bye-bye. How we should mic for the guitar. Maybe Mike will also pick it up, yeah? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You have that camera on, right?
I feel like a star tonight. I'm standing in these shining lights. I'm glad I've come to your side of town. I feel like there is magic all around. There's a lot of pretty places in sight, and fancy folks dressed in style, and here I'm being lax. I could sing my songs on and on tonight. I feel like I'm a singing star tonight. I know that this feeling is just right. I could sing my songs on and on tonight. Now all you pretty little girls, won't you look into my eyes? You got to give me inspiration. I could sing on and on because of you. 'Cause I'm just a country boy, and I have got a simple heart. And I don't want them fancy things. All I need is a little smile to turn me on. I feel like I'm a shooting star tonight. And I know that this feeling is just right. I could sing my songs on and on tonight. I could sing my songs on and on tonight.
Woo! Beautiful.
Thank you, thank you. This is one of my own songs.
Yeah, I heard that, and that's the lyrics you quoted
Yes,
earlier.
yes,
Beautiful. Wonderful, Bobby. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.